It is 28,000 BCE. You are standing on a flat, open plain in what will one day be called Siberia. The temperature is minus 35 degrees Celsius. That's minus 31 Fahrenheit. There is no tree line. The nearest forest is 400 miles south. The wind is coming from the north, and the north, at this moment in history, is a wall of ice 2 miles high, stretching unbroken from what will become Britain to what will become Alaska. You are not in a cave. There are no caves here. You are standing in front of a house. It is made of mammoth bones. And you are fine, not grimly enduring it, not one bad night away from dying. Fine in the way that means your children were born here, your parents died here, and your grandchildren will be born here too. Fine in the way that means you have solved minus 35 with nothing but what you could make with your hands. Here is the thing nobody tells you about Ice Age humans. We picture them huddled, desperate, barely hanging on at the edge of extinction, one cold snap away from being erased. That image is wrong, and it is wrong in a way that tells you more about us than about them. Because at the coldest moment in the last 100,000 years, humans didn't retreat. They expanded, they pushed north, they crossed into landscapes no living thing had stood in before, and they built lives there. And the question worth sitting with is not how did they survive. The question is how did they do it so well that the Ice Age became the crucible that forged everything that came after. Let's go through it. Move 1. The building is not a cave. The cave is the foundational lie of how we picture prehistoric life. Yes, humans used caves. Caves are excellent. They are pre-built, thermally stable, and something else did the hard work of excavating them. But caves have one significant problem. They are fixed. They are where the rock is, not where the food is. And the food in Ice Age Eurasia was mobile. Woolly mammoths, woolly rhinoceros, reindeer, bison, and horse moved with the seasons across the steppe. If you were going to eat, you had to follow, and you cannot follow a mammoth herd if your house is a cave. So, the people of the Eurasian plain built houses at sites across what is now Ukraine, Russia, and the Czech Republic. Archaeologists have uncovered the remains of structures built almost entirely from mammoth bone. Femurs and shoulder blades used as walls. Skulls used as foundation weights. Curved tusks arranged into arching roof supports. At Mezherik in Ukraine, one structure used the bones of at least 95 individual mammoths. These were not shelters of desperation. They were engineered for the specific problem. Mammoth bone is dense, heavy, and interlocking. A structure built from it resists wind. It holds its shape. Archaeological evidence suggests the frames were covered with hides, creating insulated walls that trapped body heat against the outside cold. Inside, hearths. Multiple hearths per structure at some sites. Heat sources positioned to create circulation within the space. Nobody handed these people a blueprint. They worked it out, and they worked it out well enough that some of these settlements appear to have been occupied repeatedly over generations. Move 2. The needle. Here is the invention that almost nobody talks about when they talk about human survival, and it may be the most important object ever made. The eyed sewing needle. The oldest confirmed needles are around 50,000 years old, found in Siberia, made from bird bone, thin enough to thread with fine sinew, sharp enough to pierce cured hide without splitting it. They are tiny, they are precise, and they represent a cognitive and technical leap that is genuinely difficult to overstate. Before the needle, you could wrap yourself in an animal hide. After the needle, you could wear it. That distinction is the difference between a blanket and a parka, and in minus 35, that difference is whether you lose your fingers. Tailored clothing. Clothing cut and stitched to fit the body, to seal at the wrists and ankles and neck, to trap a layer of warm air against the skin, is a technology. It is the same technology used in modern cold weather survival gear, refined over 50,000 years, but operating on identical principles. The physics of insulation did not change. The needle made it available. Evidence from burial sites across Ice Age Europe and Siberia shows clothing that was sophisticated, far beyond simple wrapping. Grave goods include ivory beads sewn along the edges of garments in patterns that would only make sense if the clothing was tailored. We cannot see the clothes. They rotted, but we can see exactly where the beads were, and the beads tell us everything. Move 3. Fat is the fuel. Here is the caloric reality of Ice Age survival that modern people find consistently hard to absorb. You needed fat, not protein, not carbohydrates. Fat. At minus 35, Your body burns through calories, maintaining core temperature at a rate that has nothing in common with a modern sedentary life. Estimates for the caloric demands of active humans in extreme cold run to 4,000 to 6,000 calories per day, and the most calorie-dense food available on the Eurasian steppe was animal fat, bone marrow, organ fat, rendered fat stored and carried as a concentrated fuel source. Lean meat alone will kill you in the cold. It is a documented phenomenon called rabbit starvation, or protein poisoning. A diet of pure lean protein without sufficient fat causes the liver to become unable to process the nitrogen load, and you starve to death with a full stomach. Arctic survival traditions across every culture that has ever lived in extreme cold converge on the same answer: eat the fat first. Ice Age humans knew this. We can tell from the bone assemblages at their sites. They were selectively processing carcasses for maximum fat yield, cracking bones for marrow, rendering fat from skulls. The hunting strategies at large kill sites suggest they were prioritizing fatty animals and fatty seasons, hunting in autumn when animals were heaviest before winter. This was not instinct, this was knowledge, accumulated over generations and passed on as deliberately as any other survival skill. Move 4. Fire is not a thing you make. It is a thing you keep. Starting a fire with friction in dry conditions with good materials takes skill and practice. Starting one in wet cold with numb fingers, green wood, and wind is a different proposition entirely. And losing your fire in the middle of an Ice Age winter is not an inconvenience. It is a countdown. So Ice Age humans did not rely on starting fires. They managed fire. They transported it. Evidence from multiple Paleolithic sites shows the deliberate transport of pyrite and flint together, the components of a strike-a-light kit, as standard carried equipment. More significantly, there is evidence of fire carrying, the movement of burning or smoldering material in containers, most likely bone or shell, across distances. You did not let the fire go out. You treated it the way you would treat water in a desert. You rationed it. You protected it. You passed it from camp to camp. The hearths at Mammoth bone structures were not just for warmth. Analysis of the fuel used shows that in areas with no timber, Ice Age people burned bone, specifically the large fatty bones of mammoths, which burn hot and slow when dried. They had identified, in the absence of wood, an alternative fuel source, and were using it systematically. Move 5. The group is the technology. Here is the move that makes all the others possible. You cannot survive an Ice Age winter alone, not because of some emotional need for company, because the caloric and labor demands of survival in extreme cold exceed what a single person, or even a single family, can physically manage. Hunting large animals requires coordination. Curing and processing enough hide to clothe a group requires labor division. Maintaining fire through a winter requires rotation. Feeding children, the injured, and the elderly requires surplus production. And surplus production in a hunter-gatherer economy requires a group large enough to generate it. The social structure was not incidental to Ice Age survival. It was the load-bearing wall. What the archaeological record shows is not isolated bands scratching out lonely existences. It shows networks, trade routes, shells found hundreds of miles from any coast, mammoth ivory worked into beads and figurines that appear across enormous geographic ranges in nearly identical styles. These are not the artifacts of isolated groups. These are the artifacts of people who were in contact, exchanging materials, exchanging ideas, and almost certainly exchanging people. The group was the technology, and the larger and more connected the network, the more resilient each individual within it became. The turning point, around 20,000 BCE, the Last Glacial Maximum, the coldest point. The ice sheets are at their greatest extent. In Britain, there is no Britain. It is buried. In North America, ice reaches as far south as what is now New York. The average global temperature is roughly 6 degrees Celsius, colder than today. And something strange happens in the human record. Population doesn't collapse. Culture doesn't simplify. If anything, the archaeological evidence from this period shows an explosion of symbolic behavior. Cave art, personal ornament, long-distance trade in prestige materials, the earliest evidence of musical instruments. The coldest moment in 100,000 years coincides with one of the richest bursts of creative output in the entire Paleolithic record. The leading explanation is uncomfortable in its implications. Extreme environmental pressure selected hard for the cognitive and social traits that define modern humans. Cooperation, planning, symbolic communication, innovation under constraint. The Ice Age did not almost kill us. It may have finished building us. Here is what I keep coming back to. There is a person standing in Siberia 28,000 years ago, in a structure made of the bones of animals they hunted, wearing clothing stitched together with a needle thinner than your finger, managing a fire they have been keeping alive for weeks, eating the fat of the kill before the meat, because they know, from knowledge passed down through generations, that the fat is what keeps you alive. Not one part of that is luck. Not one part of it is instinct. Every piece of it is accumulated, transmitted, deliberate human knowledge, technology without a name, engineering without a blueprint. We tend to think of the distance between that person and us as almost incomprehensible. Different world, different mind, different species, almost. But the needle in their hand is the direct ancestor of every piece of cold weather gear you have ever owned. The fire management strategy is the same strategy used in polar expeditions today. The caloric logic is what every wilderness survival manual is built on. They were not almost us. They were us, running the same hardware in harder conditions, with better software than we give them credit for. The Ice Age lasted tens of thousands of years. They were there for all of it, not huddled, not desperate, building houses from the bones of the largest animals on Earth, and passing what they learned to their children and their children's children, until eventually one of those children walked out the other side and into everything that came after. So here is the question. If you stripped away every modern convenience and dropped you into that Siberian plain tonight, what is the one skill, the one piece of knowledge you carry right now that you think would actually matter? Let me know in the comments. Until then, see you soon.